Industrial Revolution definition and background. Erstdefinition, the Industrial Revolution refers to a period of significant social, economic, and technological change that began in Great Britain in the late 18th century and gradually spread to other parts of Europe, North America, and the world. It marked the transition from traditional agrarian economies to industrialized and urbanized societies, characterized by mass production, mechanization, and innovation in transportation, communication, and energy use. The revolution fundamentally altered the way goods were produced, labor was organized, and economies were structured. It is widely considered one of the most transformative events in human history, leading to the modern industrialized world. 2. Historical background. 2.1 Pre-industrial society. Before the Industrial Revolution, most people lived in rural areas and worked in agriculture. Economies were primarily agrarian, and production was done at a small scale in homes or local workshops. A system known as cottage industry or putting out system. Energy sources were limited, relying mainly on human labor, animal power, wood, and water. Manufacturing and trade existed, but they were labor-intensive, decentralized, and limited by transportation difficulties and seasonal constraints. Population growth was relatively slow, and urban centers were small by modern standards. Transition to industrialization. 2.2. The transition to an industrial economy began in the late 1700s in Britain, catalyzed by a number of technological innovations, a growing population, expanding overseas, trade, and changes in agriculture that freed up labor and increased productivity. Over the next century, these changes reshaped the economy, society, and global relations. 3. Causes of the Industrial Revolution. Several interrelated factors contributed to the onset of the Industrial Revolution, particularly in Britain. 3.1 Agricultural Revolution. The Agricultural Revolution of the 17th and 18th centuries introduced new farming techniques such as crop rotation, selective breeding, and the enclosure movement that boosted food production and freed up labor. As productivity rose, fewer people were needed on farms, leading to migration to cities and the development of a mobile labor force for emerging factories. 3.2 Technological innovations. New machines and inventions revolutionized production. Spinning jenny 1764 by James Hargreaves increased yarn production. Water frame 1769 by Richard Arkwright used water power to spin cotton. Steam engine improved by James Watt in the 1770s. Enabled efficient power generation for factories, transportation, and mining. Power loom 1787 by Edmund Cartwright. Mechanized weaving. These inventions mechanized textile production, reducing manual labor and increasing output. 3.3 Natural resources. Britain had access to abundant coal and iron ore, essential for powering machines and building infrastructure. Rivers and canals facilitated inland transport, and its coastline and navy enabled global trade. 3.4 Capital and investment. A wealthy and politically stable society allowed for investment in new industries. Profits from trade, especially from colonial ventures and the Atlantic slave trade, were reinvested into infrastructure, machinery, and innovation. 3.5 Political stability and institutions. Britain's stable government, protection of private property, patent laws, and functioning financial system banks. Stock exchanges created a favorable environment for entrepreneurial ventures and industrial growth. 3.6 Expanding markets. The British Empire and the growing demand for goods at home and abroad stimulated mass production. Colonies provided raw materials and markets for manufactured goods. 4. Phases of the Industrial Revolution. Historians often divide the Industrial Revolution into two phases. 4.1 First Industrial Revolution c. focused mainly on textiles, steam power, and iron. Key developments included mechanization of textile production, steam engines powering factories and locomotives, development of railroads and canals, growth of factory system labor, was concentrated in large-scale operations with fixed working hours and specialization. 4.2 Second Industrial Revolution c. 1870-94, marked by expansion into new industries and technologies, use of steel, electricity, and chemicals, development of internal combustion engines and automobiles, introduction of assembly lines, e.g. Henry Ford's Model T, rise of telegraph, telephone, and later radio, corporate capitalism, and the rise of industrial giants. 5. Key sectors affected. 5.1 Textile industry. The textile industry was at the forefront of industrialization. The mechanization of spinning and weaving transformed production, reducing costs and boosting output. Factories replaced home-based production, leading to urban migration and new labor dynamics. 5.2 Iron and coal industries. The iron industry expanded due to the demand for machinery, tools, railways, and construction. Innovations like puddling and rolling allowed for better quality iron. Coal became the main source of energy for steam engines and industrial processes. 5.3 Transportation. Transport underwent a revolution. Canals and roads improved trade and internal movement. Railways beginning with the Stockton and Darlington Railway in 1825 drastically reduced transportation time and costs. Steamships enhanced overseas trade and mobility. 5.4 Urbanization. The population shift from rural to urban areas led to rapid urban growth, often without adequate infrastructure. New industrial cities like Manchester, Birmingham, and Glasgow became symbols of industrial progress and of overcrowding, pollution, and social challenges. 6. Social and economic impacts. 6.1 Labor and working conditions. Emergence of a working-class factory workers often faced long hours, low wages, and unsafe conditions. Child labor was widespread in factories and mines. Labor unions began to form, advocating for better rights and conditions. 6.2 Social changes. Rise of the middle-class industrialists, merchants, and professionals gained wealth and influence. Class divisions became more pronounced between the capitalist elite and the laboring masses. Traditional ways of life eroded as people moved to cities and adapted to new work patterns. 6.3 Economic growth. Massive increases in productivity, output, and wealth. Expansion of consumer goods and access to previously luxury items. Foundation of capitalist economies and global trade networks. 6.4 Technological progress. Continuous innovation in engineering, communication, and transportation laid the groundwork for the modern technological era. 7. Global spread of industrialization. After Britain, industrialization spread to Western Europe, France, Belgium, and Germany. Rapidly industrialized in the 19th century, United States experienced rapid industrial growth post-Civil War, becoming a major industrial power. Japan under the Meiji Restoration 1868-1912, Japan embraced industrialization to compete with Western powers. Eventually, industrialization impacted much of the globe, though the pace and nature varied by region. 8. Criticisms and consequences. While the Industrial Revolution brought enormous benefits, it also had drawbacks: environmental degradation, pollution from factories, and resource extraction, exploitation of labor, harsh conditions, including child and female labor exploitation, urban problems, overcrowding, poor sanitation, and disease. In rapidly growing cities, colonial exploitation. Industrialized nations extracted raw materials and exploited labor in colonies to fuel growth. 9. Legacy and conclusion. The Industrial Revolution transformed the world. It changed how people lived, worked and interacted. It created a framework for modern capitalism and global trade, technological innovation and scientific advancement, urban and industrial development. At the same time, it raised enduring issues of social inequality, labor rights, and environmental sustainability.